For this episode of Wanted, a Midlife Hobby, we'll change gears a little and talk about a more physical hobby. Come along for the ride as we strap on a helmet and talk with Carol Curley and Mary Bennett, two friends from the Baltimore metro area who speak about their enthusiasm for biking. Maybe after listening in, you'll decide you're not over the hill, but you are ready to get over it. All right. I am very pleased to be here today talking with, frankly, two dear friends of mine, Mary Bennett, Carol Curley. How are you guys doing today?
Good.
Wonderful, wonderful. We are going to talk today about cycling, and I'm going to set the stage. This is, out of all the hobbies I've had a chance to talk with people, this is the first time I think this is a truly physical one. I'm not sure you would call magic a physical one, but that would probably be, well, then of course yoga, but this is the most physical kind of hobby. And I know that there's different levels for people in terms of participation. And I think that I kind of have read from you guys that you also kind of have, I don't want to call it a level of commitment, but a different level of participation as well. I do want to start with, though, just the basic. And Carol, I'm going to hit you first. I mean, how did you actually get started with cycling in the first place?
I've been biking like literally all my life. When I was little, my parents threw our bikes on top of the man, and we went to the C&O Canal, and we would ride our bikes, even on little tiny bikes for miles. I still remember doing that. And then Mary and I started riding together when we like junior high school. Riding bikes was a way to get around. We haven't stopped riding together since. But now I'm mostly into mountain biking, and the mountain biking came about because when my son was 11 years old, I sent him to a mountain bike camp just to have something to do in the summertime. And when he's 11 years old, he can't go out in the woods by himself, but he was hooked and somebody had to be in the woods with him. So I went with him and I learned along with him.
Oh, that's pretty awesome. So is it true then, Mary, I guess Carol got you started, or were you biking on your own before you guys started biking together?
No, I mean, she got me into mountain biking for sure, because that's pretty recent. But no, I was just like her, just biked all the time. It was our way of getting around the neighborhood, how I would go to her house, how we, went to school or whatever. And we had that really great bike trail, the B&A trail. Mm-hmm. In our neighborhood or vicinity. And that was wonderful because we would, when we were older and we could drive, we would drive to the trail. And I loved that trail. It was just great because you didn't have to worry about cars and traffic or whatever. And it was just flat and straight. And we loved it. And we would do that. So yeah, as a kid, I just biked to get around and just enjoyed it. And then later, out of high school, in college, I was biking more. And that's when Carol and I started doing these I wouldn't call them bike races. They were normally like MS races where you would raise money. But it was a really nice course that you could do. And it was, they'd have rest stops and, they usually had different lengths. So you could do a 20 or a 15 or something. You could do a 30, you could do a 50, 100, and those were wonderful because you could just go and you felt like you were like a pro because you were with all these people. And what was really nice was the streets were, cordoned off and you had these stops. So that was a nice thing to do. And
then we signed up for the MS 150. And we thought it was 150 kilometers, but it was 150 miles over a weekend. And we rode from Harrisburg to Harper's Ferry, and we didn't know what we were in for that weekend. But
so at the end of the first day, so 150 miles is, I don't know, like, was it 90 or 100? 150 kilometers is like 90 or 100 miles or something like that. So after the first day, we had biked like 75 or 80. And Carol and I were looking at each other like, are we only going to bike like 15 miles tomorrow? That seems odd.
Oh my gosh. So even while you were on the trip, you didn't realize.
We had no idea. It was at the end of the first day. We were like, wow, we've really biked a lot today.
Right.
No.
We're in Mount St. Mary's, and we know that we're finishing in Harper's Ferry the next day. And we're like, oh, how are we going to get all the way to Harper's Ferry?
In 15 miles.
Yeah. That was an awesome experience, though. And
It really was.
Yes.
But talk about just being oblivious. I mean, we just did this craziest things. I mean, but that was back when we were young and dumb. So
yes.
But it was fun.
Why did you like it though? So tell me why you liked it, because obviously there's a passion here, right? So what about that particular trip did you like about it?
Well, we trained a lot. We actually trained. We trained for 90 miles, not 150 miles, but we did do a lot of training, and that was fun because we would get together a lot. We were doing the bike trail, the B&A, and we did all these practice rides, which was cool. Like you felt like you were getting ready for some big accomplishment. And that ride was just so amazing. We went through 4 states, right, Carol? We went through Virginia, West Virginia, PA, and Maryland. 150 miles, and it was all up or down. I mean, it was so challenging. Really challenging. And I don't think we had trained enough for it, to be honest.
No.
We spent the night at a college. Was it Mount St. Mary's?
Mount St. Mary's College in Emmitsburg. Yeah.
We spent the night there. That evening, they had bands and food and just all this cool stuff for all the people that were riding. And I don't know how many people rode, but it was a lot of people.
Yeah. And when we met people, there was some girl and some guy we ended up riding with, ran into people that I knew from Andover Pool that, were on the ride. And, just like it's a community. Biking is a community. And, it was just, and it's an accomplishment. When you're done at the end, you're like, wow, look what we just did.
Yeah.
And
of course they finished at the top of the hill at Harper's Ferry. We had to go uphill.
Oh, no kidding. Oh,
Yeah,
that's a steep hill too.
It was brutal.
That's an incredibly steep hill. I have been there, and I don't like walking it. How do you bike it?
Right. But you spend, so the big thing with me about cycling, it's being outdoors. It's an outdoor activity. I just want to always be outdoors. And to me, like, I'll hike and I walk and stuff like that. But cycling allows you to cover more ground in a shorter period of time. When you're walking and you're like, wow, I got to walk all the way around that lake or all the way up that hill. And when you're on a bike, it's over quicker. Okay. And you see more scenery.
And the things that the trip you were just talking about, was that all a mountain bike trip, or are there different kinds of bikes, and what's the difference and what do you like better? Yeah.
So no, that ride we were just talking about was road riding. We were on roads, which I don't know, back in the day, that was in late 80s, early 90s. That's what most people, there wasn't as many trails, and I was oblivious probably to all the trails and mountain biking and all that.
Yeah, I don't know if mountain
riding on roads was like the primary, and all of that was on roads. But with the C&O Canal, has been there forever, but the NCR Trail, which is right near where Mary lives, I don't know when that opened.
That's been around for a long time too, because I remember riding it when I was in college. Was in the mid 80s. I did ride the C&O.
Okay,
so it's been there a while.
But like rail trails and stuff like that. So I think there's road riding where you're literally riding with cars, which I refuse to do anymore because it's just not safe. Yeah, I don't want to be on a road with cars. And then there's trails, usually paved or gravel, mostly flat rail trail kind of stuff. And there's a lot of that, everywhere around, there was stuff that Mary rode down towards DC. And anyway, there's those kinds of trails. And then mountain biking is when you're literally riding through the woods. You're on trails, you're on designated trails, but it's natural surface, off-road, streams, rocks, roots, down trees, logs, whatever, so those are kind of like the 3 main kinds of biking that I would, and then there's probably variations, and there's gravel roads, gravel bikes, and but the three main. All I do mostly now is mountain biking. Mary and I still do trails. We just finished the C&O Canal last year. Finally.
How long is that? I thought I remembered you telling me it's a long trail. Yes.
It's like 180 some miles. Is that right?
Or 180 something.
Yeah.
But we did it in segments over. We finally. It was over a 12-year period that we eventually.
It's not that big of an accomplishment.
See, I could do that a mile a week. Now you're talking my language. Okay.
We did a little bit more than that.
Okay.
But between my kids growing up and her kids growing up, finding time to go out and dedicate to yourself to riding for a weekend was not easy.
I think if we did it once a year, we were lucky. There were years that we skipped, like we just couldn't find a weekend to do.
Yeah.
But
well, congratulations on the persistence, nonetheless. No matter how long it takes, it was that's an accomplishment. So that's great. That's awesome.
Yeah,
it was fun.
Yeah. So out of the three types, Mary, which of those three types do you like mountain biking the best, or which do you like best out of those different types of biking?
Well, I've always done like road biking predominantly most of my life. And now I live near the NCR trail. So that's a flat trail. It's crushed gravel. So I have a hybrid bike. So the wheels are a little bit wider than a road bike, but they're not as wide as a mountain bike tires. So it's a real comfortable bike. And I just do the NCR trail mainly just because it's convenient. It's here. I generally don't go on the roads anymore. Just like Carol said, I'm not doing that anymore. And I don't know, I don't know if it's been 3 or 4 or 5 years, Carol introduced me to mountain biking. I think the first time I rode was on one of your son's bikes. Is that right? Mountain bike? Because I don't have a mountain bike. So I rode her son's bike and she took me on a very easy trail so I wouldn't kill myself. And it was fun. I love it because I love hiking. I love being in the woods and I love biking. So it was like the best of two worlds. When it was easy like that, an easy trail that she took me on. And then later, one of her friends was outgrowing her bike or wanted a new bike. And I ended up, getting her bike. So now I actually have a mountain bike. That's a very nice mountain bike. And when I bike with Carol, that's what I use.
Oh, that's cool. All right. So Carol, I'm going to come back to you with that question, but there's two topics that have come up here. Number one is, buying the bikes and all those kinds of things. Somebody who is thinking, okay, I'm going to start a cycling hobby. Like, what kind of financial investment do you think they're looking at?
So I can speak mostly to mountain bikes because I haven't looked at hybrids or road bikes lately, but biking is not cheap. There is a financial investment, especially for mountain biking. Because if you're going to try to mountain bike, you have to be on a mountain bike. You can try it on a hybrid bike, and some, hybrids would be able to handle an easier trail, but you're not going to have the best experience. And if you really want to try mountain biking and see if it's something you want to get into, you need to do it on a mountain bike. So to start out with, you should test it out before you invest in it. So Mary rode one of my son's old bikes, when they were younger. So try to borrow a bike. Some bike shops will rent demo bikes, so you can just rent a bike for a day. And sometimes after COVID, maybe this will come back to being a thing, but they used to have demo days where race pace doesn't even exist anymore in the Baltimore area, but they would bring all these bikes to Patapsco State Park, and you could go and give them your license and go, take a bike out for a ride. And that was a good way to kind of test out the equipment without, and just see what kind of bike you like if you thought you might want to purchase one. But you definitely need to get access to a mountain bike. To purchase now bikes, just like everything else nowadays, there's supply chain issues. It's not easy to buy a mountain bike right now. There are some out there, but getting the one that you want that works for you, that's the right frame size and everything else, there are certain ones that's going to take, months or a year to get what you really want.
Wow.
But if you do find, and if it was available, I would say the minimum investment is probably $600 to $800 for an entry level.
And that's just the bike, right? Is there other equipment that you have to get besides the bike, or?
You need the bike. You need a helmet. You cannot mountain bike without it. You should never bike any kind of bike without a helmet, but do not mountain bike without a helmet. Because there's a really good chance you're going to fall, especially when you're starting. And you're
not selling this very well right now. I'm here to tell you, you know what I'm saying?
Well, so let me just pipe in as a novice mountain bike rider. I think you really need a friend that, Carol was perfect for me. It's like she knew the trails. She knew the easy trails. She knew the hard trails. She didn't want me to get hurt. She wanted me to have a good experience. So she was really great about saying, okay, this is going to be coming up. You got to do this to get over this, or we're going downhill and this is what you have to do. I mean, I had like a trainer right with me. So I think it's really hard to do if you don't have someone that knows, what they're doing. I think it's a hard thing. Like getting on the NCR trail, no big deal. You just get on it and you go. But for mountain biking, I think you really do need to have groups or friends, and Carol belongs to a group, so that would be a good thing to do. Like if you're trying to get into it.
What are some of the groups? You talked about the community. There's a community out there. So there's groups. There's like resources. I mean, how do you get connected with people? Are there places that people can go? How would you tell somebody, okay, I want to get connected and learn more, and how would you tell them to go about doing it?
Yeah, and Mary brings up a very good point. You need the bike, you need the helmet, you need water, you need to be hydrated. Like those are probably the three main things that you need. And then you need company. You need a friend. Don't do this alone. I would never, I don't ride alone. Just because if something happens, you want to make sure that you have somebody there, but you also need the guidance. So, having a friend, knowing somebody that knows somebody to take you out, knowing where to start on easy trails. There are Facebook groups, Patapsco Mountain Bikers Facebook group, Fairlands Recreation and Parks Facebook group, just some of the local parks in the area have Facebook groups for mountain bikers. A lot of bike shops have rides. They sponsor rides. So I've never been on any, and I'm trying to think of who has some now, but there will, like on a Sunday morning, they'll say, okay, meet at this parking lot or meet at this parking area of the park, and we're doing a beginner ride or we're doing an intermediate ride. So you need to make sure if you're a beginner, you go to one of the beginner rides. And that way you're riding with a guide who knows the trails. And as Mary was saying, somebody that knows the trails, they know what's appropriate for a beginner. They're going to give you some guidance. It's free. So you're not getting, one-on-one attention necessarily, but, there's a group of people, they're going to give you basic guidance and lead you through some trails to introduce you to the trail. And a lot of times, again, if it's a bike shop that's sponsoring a ride, you might be able to get a bike from them as well. So that's probably one of your best bets. Go to one of the local bike shops, look at the Facebook groups. I got hooked up with, I don't even know how I originally heard about Muddy Pedals. So Muddy Pedals is a women's mountain bike group based out of Catonsville that we meet at Rockburn every Monday night. And we take people on rides. So if you've never been on a mountain bike before, you can show up and we will have a group for you where you'll be with an instructor that will lead you on a ride through Rockburn Park in Howard County. And we have different levels. So, depending on where you are in the levels. But the group has, biking has become a really big thing during COVID. everybody wanted to get outside.
Yeah.
So this group went from, 20 some women would show up on a Monday night for a ride to now we've got, last Monday we had 67 people show up on a Monday night for a ride. So
but you do divide them up. I mean, you don't have 60 people. I mean, you have like about 10 people, would you say, per group?
Yeah, I think last week we had like 6 or 7 group ride leaders, and we have the very beginners, just how do you be safe on the bike, on the easiest trails. And then you can kind of move up through the levels, and we help people basically advance their biking skills to, through each one of the levels, graduating from Rockburn Park going over to Patapsco, where the hills are bigger, the routes are bigger, the stream crossings are bigger, and, just kind of helping you advance. And I have learned a lot just from riding with these women. So my personal skills have improved. And I'm now a ride leader, and I help people. It's fun because I get to help people. I can do it with Mary because I know her, and I'm going to help her, teach her. But now there's tons of women that I have helped learn how to mountain bike and advance their skills and get comfortable on, doing different things. So to me, I'm like you, empty nester. I've got time on my hands. Wow. What do this is new to me. What do I do with it when I'm done, when I'm done working? And it's been an awesome community, meeting people, making friends, and just having people, there's not a lot of people that I can say I know besides Mary from, junior high school or, long friends that have any interest in going out on a crazy mountain bike ride. It's a very
I'm the only crazy one.
Okay. Mary's the only crazy one to do it with me. But it's a unique interest. And when you find a bunch of women that are just like you, that are like, yeah, let's do this, and just have fun, and it's so supportive, and we stop and we practice. If you struggle on an obstacle or something, let's stop and practice that, and let's talk. You talk through it, and how would you approach it? And I don't know. To me, it's just it works for me for where I am in my life, and what I can do. It's also excellent exercise. But biking in general is really good exercise. Mountain biking is probably the best full body workout I've ever had.
Mountain biking is actually a workout. What I do on the NCR trail kind of isn't. I could stop. Not that I stop, but you know what I mean. You can go as slow as you want, or you can go as fast as you want.
So would you guys be disappointed if I'm saying right now NCR sounds better to me than
you and me,
biking?
Rob? You and me.
Yeah, and even if you're riding slow mountain biking, it's just you're using your brain, your arms, your core, your back, your shoulders, your leg. It's not just legs. You are literally using every muscle and engaging every muscle because you're constantly moving around. You're not just sitting down and riding. You're standing up and you're shifting your weight and you're pulling on the handlebars and you're doing all kinds of stuff. So again, to me, like, I don't go to the gym. I've never been a gym workout kind of person. But mountain biking is my exercise. It is my workout.
And Mary, do you still go out regardless of the weather? If it's raining out, do you bag it, or do you still do it?
No, I'm a fair weather. No, I only go out when it's a beautiful day like today.
Okay.
Yeah, that's it. If it's a little bit on the cold side, that's about as tough as conditions as I do,
Okay.
It's a little chilly, but I'll still go.
I feel better about myself, so I appreciate that, because that was my Carol. I could picture Carol. You must be out like in the blizzards too, right? Does the weather stop you, or?
Not in the blizzards. Because that you would need fat tire bikes that they have at like at ski resorts to like try to ride in the snow like that. But
you can go out in the rain, do you?
No. Oh yeah, actually mountain bike community etiquette is you do not ride in the rain.
Because you'll mess up the trails, right?
Right, because you're going to mess up the trails. So
Gotcha,
like 24 hours after a rain, or if it was a substantial rain, you wait until those trails dry out before you ride, because the repeated use and tires going through all that mud, it destroys the trails. So yeah, you need to kind of wait until you're not leaving ruts in the mud. Now there's certain spots on trails that they never dry out. There's a spot in Rockburn that I haven't seen dry in 5 years, like, but it has a little way to kind of go around it. But for the most part, you wait until the trails are dry, because you don't want to destroy the trails, because if one person destroys them, then they destroy them for everybody. And again, on the Facebook groups, there's all kinds of people that will give you an earful about why you shouldn't be out there on the trails. But people also go and say, hey, what are the trail conditions? Has it dried out since it rained 3 days ago? And people will post back and say, yes, I just got back, and, trails are in good shape. And, there's ways to get information about the conditions. So you don't ride in the rain. But I have actually started riding pretty much through the winter. This year I did mountain biking on the mountain bike trails through the winter. And in the winter, I never thought I would do this. But in the winter, you have to ride when it's below freezing, when the ground is frozen. Again, this is for trail preservation.
Okay.
You need to ride while the ground is frozen, because if you're riding on the frozen ground, you're not going to dig it up. You're not going to destroy it.
Isn't it harder on your body though to ride in the frozen, or is it the same?
It's my friends that came out riding with me described it as riding on bumpy concrete. Yes. Oh. Because it definitely feels completely different than the same trail riding now versus riding that same trail in the winter when the ground is frozen. Just has a different feel to it. And sands, like sandy spots, that right now as you're going around the corner in sand, you got to watch out so your tire doesn't slip out. In the winter, that sand was like solid. It was actually easier to ride in the winter because you weren't sinking down into the sand. It was frozen. So lots of differences, but it's cold. And I actually know some people that wear their ski helmets with goggles while they're mountain biking in the winter for warmth, because you need the warmth. It's but I can work up a sweat when it's 20 degrees out. I was sweating like you don't know what, but because you're just getting that much of a workout. Yeah. Riding even though it's cold.
But if we're recommending to somebody who's getting started, I'm going to still tell them summer months and then let yourself work up to the winter.
Yes. Yes. Okay. Yes. Yeah. This is, again, I'm an empty nester. I have time to do these things now. And that's where I think I'm a little more into it now than Mary is, because she's not an empty nester yet. So, we're kind of in different stages of our lives. You can get as into biking as you want. The more you put into it, the more you ride, the better your skills are going to be, and the quicker you're going to advance and develop your skills. But if you go once a week or you go once every couple weeks, that's perfectly fine. You can do that.
Don't go away. We'll be right back after the break with more Wanted, a Midlife Hobby. So what I'm hearing is that Mary will start biking in the winter in just a couple of years. Is that?
No. That's not what you're hearing. About that. I am a warm weather person anyway.
Yeah. Like I said, I never thought I'd be doing it either, but I don't know. For some reason, I did.
Fall. I mean, fall is really a great time to ride. That's actually a really nice season. The best.
Is that the best time to ride? That's one of my questions is when do you guys think is the best time to get out there?
Spring, depending on people's allergies, spring can be tough. I don't have allergies, but I love spring. Summer can be too hot. So you ride early or late in the day. Fall's the best. Fall's the best.
Okay.
Pretty colors. I don't know. What do you think, Carol?
Yeah, I've always been more of a spring person. I love spring, and as I'm riding now, I'm looking at the stuff that's, you're riding down the path, and I'm looking at what's starting to grow. And oh gosh, the other night, riding through Patapsco, we're riding through, and all of a sudden we're like, oh my gosh, what is that scent? And something is blooming. We never did really quite figure out what it was. It might have been May apples. I was trying to research it, but you're riding. All of a sudden, you get this huge area where you have this really cool scent that you're smelling, and we're like, something blooming, or we know whatever it was. And there was different pockets as we were riding that we kept hitting this scent. And we're like, what is it? What is it? But we're yelling to each other as we're riding down the path. So you're like, you smell that? And, it was just really neat. So I don't know.
I like spring too. It's just like some people have allergies and that can be tough.
Yes. Yeah. Because you're going to be breathing heavy. And if you do have allergies, and you have breathing issues and stuff like that, I do have some friends that carry an inhaler with them. So if we're out for a ride and all of a sudden they're having a hard time, we'll stop and they'll use their inhaler just to help them keep going.
So there's a couple of things that you guys have both mentioned that I'll put in the health and safety category, right? You're not riding on roads with cars anymore. You absolutely have to have the helmet, even to the point of the allergies. I mean, if somebody is concerned about health and safety kinds of issues, forget about the sore muscles part. Let's assume that everybody's recognizes that's a part of it. But if they're concerned about other health and safety, what would you say to them that might make them feel a little less concerned about the safety of cycling?
Is this for mountain biking or trail? I mean,
well, you pick. You tell me.
The safest thing is to get on a trail, like B&A, NCR. There's a million trails. There's trails in DC, Baltimore. I mean, get on a trail. It's going to be flat. You're not going to have to deal with cars. Just know the rules of the road, stay on the right, pass on the left, call the people that you're passing and have your helmet on, really. And that's just the safest way to do it. If you don't want to deal with roads and things like that, that's the safest thing.
Yeah. Okay. And especially if you're starting from ground zero, getting yourself into some level of physical condition to ride on the trails is a good first step, because you at least develop some of the leg muscles and some strength and conditioning. So, and if you then want to try mountain biking, at least you've got some level of conditioning. Mm-hmm. If somebody comes out and they've never biked before and they go straight to mountain biking, it's going to be really hard, because mountain biking is hard. And if you don't have any level of conditioning at all, it can probably be pretty intimidating.
You won't be able to do it. I mean, you won't be able to do it at some point. You know what I mean? Like you'll just be getting off the bike and walking, because it's difficult. Yeah.
Right. But actually, the other thing to keep in mind with mountain biking, because there's always something that's a challenge that you're going to encounter on the trail. It's okay to stop and walk. I'm not big on logs, going over logs. I can get over small logs, but there's a certain size log where I just say, it's not worth it. I'm just going to stop and walk over it. I could go to classes and I could try to learn how to get over those logs. But if you don't want to learn, that's fine. Just stop and walk it. Okay. So there's when and you'll find anybody that you're going to end up mountain biking with will more than likely be supportive of, if it's too hard, just let me know. You're going up a hill and you struggle going up the hill. Just get off and walk. We'll meet you at the top. So it's not like you have to commit to doing it and kill yourself. There's always going to be, if you're with somebody, it'll be a supportive group, and kind of like do it at your own pace, and don't feel like it's bad if you say, hey, I can't do this.
Okay. So one of the questions I promised I'd circle back, because I already got Mary's answer, but Carol, out of the 3 types of biking that you described, which one do you like the best?
As you can tell from everything that I've talked about, I fell in love with the mountain biking, and that is my number one. I actually got rid of my hybrid bike. So when Mary and I ride on a trail now, I just ride my mountain bike. But it's something that the mountain biking, it's very engaging. Like I said, it's a really good workout, like full body workout, but it's also engaging because as you're riding, you're looking at where you're going, and you're picking the line that you're going to take, and you're constantly thinking. I think what I like, my brain just never stops, turning. So when you're mountain biking, my brain is focused on what's that next route that I have to get over, or, you're constantly thinking about, and you're looking ahead and planning ahead, and you forget all the other stuff that was running through your brain, your work, and, whatever else is going on. And it's a good release, and you just focus on your biking until you stop. And then us women, we stop and chat, and, at the top of a hill or whatever. And then we're talking and talking and talking and talking.
Well, you think men don't stop chat? I mean, this is like draft week. So, men have things they have to chat about as well.
That's true. That's true. Whereas if you're riding on a trail, Mary and I can talk. You're talking the whole time. 5 hours straight while we're riding on the C&O Canal and not stop, because you're not having as many obstacles and, other things to deal with. So I do still love doing, the trail rides like that. But, to me, on more of a regular basis, the mountain biking is just what kind of sparks my interest and energizes me. Okay.
What I feel like I'm reading from you, and correct me on this, is when you're getting started, you want to do much more of the flat lands, the trails. When you get more into it is probably when you kind of graduate into the mountain biking piece. Is that appropriate, or?
And only if you want to.
And only if you want to. Okay.
Yeah.
That's fair.
Right. Yeah, because there's nothing wrong with just always there's tons of people that just do trails, and that's what they like. Now, I do know a few people that don't really bike much and went straight into mountain biking because they knew somebody like me or a friend of mine that, mountain bikes, and they said, oh, you should, try to join us. And the people that are successful doing that are already in really good physical shape. They go to the gym, they do HIIT workouts, they, lift weights, they run, or, do some type of cardio. So if you're already physically in really good shape, but you've never biked much just because that's not your thing, I have seen a few people be pretty successful jumping straight into mountain biking when they're already, their body is ready for it.
Okay. Well, that will not be an issue for me, I can assure you. I'm not, I am in shape. It just happens to be a round, somewhat pear-looking shape. So, but that leads me to a question, and this is a highly personal question coming from me. But my biggest problem with cycling, I could not get a comfortable seat. To put it in very blunt terms, it just hurts my butt, and I don't know.
It's a very, very, very common question.
How do you fix that
for men?
Yes,
women. Every man I know has this question.
So how do you fix it? You
have to get a good seat. You have to get a seat and it's really just, you have to just try different things. But you definitely have to wear padded shorts, I think. Right, Carol?
Yeah, they're like the bike and the helmet are like the number one things. There's a few other touch points that are optional, but that I personally would recommend. the padded shorts. I always wear padded shorts. I know a lot of women that don't wear padded shorts, or even men, but whatever, it's personal preference. And gloves. Not that the gloves are super padded, but if your hands are sweaty, then your finger's not going to slip off the brake while you're riding. And it just gives you a little bit of protection as you're going through trails. Sometimes you get scraped up with, stupid branches sticking out or whatever. I always wear full finger gloves all the time, all, like year round, I'll wear full finger gloves. But the big thing with this seat, for one thing, when you're mountain biking, it's not as bad because you're not always sitting down. If you're on a trail, you're sitting down on that seat for hours at a time, kind of the same position, repetitive motion. Mm-hmm. When you're mountain biking, you're shifting your body all over the place. So there's a lot of
necessarily sitting on the seat. Really.
Yeah, you're not sitting down. You're standing up. If you're going downhill or you're coasting flat, most of the time you're standing up. And so you're using your legs and you're not just sitting down. Even when you're going uphill, you're shifting your body weight forward. And so it's not just the same repetitive motion, the same repetitive position. But even mountain biking, there are mountain bikes that you buy in a store. They come with just like a really skinny, hard seat. Now I upgraded mine to something that's a little nicer. It's still, mountain bike seats are skinnier than a lot of other bike seats, but mine's still a little more padded. Now I have a friend that was having problems, and she went, you can have a bike fitting. You can go to a bike shop. Patapsco Bicycles is where she went, and they did a fitting, and they had her sitting on a pad, like a memory foam kind of thing, that measures your sit bones. And based on that, they can recommend an appropriate seat for you.
Just please tell me they don't make a butt mold. That's all I need to hear.
No, they don't. Okay. They don't make a mold, but that just, when I heard that recently, it blew my mind. I was like, wow, that is so cool that they can figure out exactly, based on that, like measurement. They basically get a measurement from it, and they can say, okay, your seat should be this length, this width, this much padding, whatever, and can help make sure you've got something that's going to give you a comfortable ride.
Yeah, something tells me that when you started biking as a kid, they probably didn't have that option. So.
No, my first bike might even have had like a banana seat or something.
Oh, everybody had the banana bike. Everybody in our age group had the banana bike.
Until we got, Mary and I both had Soma 10 speeds that were bought, probably both of them were bought at the bike shop in Glen Burnie, which hasn't been there forever, but I still
weighed 50 pounds each.
Yes.
And those are the bikes. Well, that's the bike I did the 150 miles with.
Oh, wow.
The Soma, that was like lead. You had a nice like road bikes.
Yes, I had upgraded a tour,
but I had that hunk of lead to ride. It was horrible.
Yes.
The other funny thing about that trip was back in the day, we didn't have bike helmets. And that ride required every rider to have a bike helmet. So Carol and I, of course, again, last minute, oh crap, did we get helmets? No, we didn't. And we had to pull over at some bike shop and buy helmets on the way to the ride.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Yep.
Oh, wow.
Our first bike. And we have not ridden without helmets since.
Yeah, I always have a helmet on.
That sounds smart.
Yeah.
All right. I want to ask you guys then, you've given a lot of good advice, a lot of things that anybody listening to this, I'm going to give you a two-part question kind of all wrapped in one, because a lot of people who listen, they are probably holding down some sort of full-time job, or at least they have, wherever they are, time is an issue. How would you say is the right way to go about managing time? And how would you tie that into like one piece of advice you would give anybody who's thinking about getting started?
It's really like getting it on the calendar, but you also have to look at the weather. So, I'm always looking at the weather. Like if it's the weekend, like can I ride Saturday? Just, what's it going to be like? And if it's rainy, I just don't go. So, but it's just putting it in your calendar. I mean, the way Carol and I did the C&O Canal, I mean, it was hard. It was really hard to schedule it. But once it was in your calendar, it might have been 5 months away. In January, we talk about May or June when we could do it after the kids were out of school, right, Carol?
Yep.
And just put it down. And then we always had a rain date. We're like, okay, I can do it this Saturday and I can do it this Sunday. Let's put it in the calendar and hopefully it'll happen.
Fantastic. Carol, one piece of advice for anybody listening who wants to get started.
Yeah, I think trying to make it a routine, scheduling, it all plays into scheduling. So with the mountain biking, knowing that Muddy Pedals every Monday night from April through September, they're going to be riding. You just try to make a conscious effort and just say, okay, if this is something I really want to do, let me try to do that. And knowing that you meet people there and there's other people that are going to be there and to kind of just make it part of your routine. If you really want to do it and make it part of your like fitness, aspect of your life. And that really goes into the number one piece of advice is find a group, because this is not something, again, the mountain biking is not something that you want to do by yourself. So finding that group kind of blends in that, make it part of your routine. Because then you have people reaching out to you outside of the Monday night ride saying, hey, you want to meet up on Saturday morning and ride? And, it just becomes part of what you do. Again, if you really want to do that. Trail riding, if you really don't have a group or can't find a group or aren't interested in running with others, trail riding, just going out by yourself and just like flying on the trail and let your mind, wander wherever it wants to wander on its own is, another great thing to do, because I still, like that as well. But yeah, that's, right. I think finding the group is then the support is key to success.
Okay, well, if you live near where Carol and Mary are, look for Muddy Pedals or one of the other groups that are nearby. Otherwise, I'm sure there's a comparable group near you. I want to give a big thank you to both of you. Carol, Mary, thanks a lot. This was a lot of fun, so I appreciate it, guys.
No problem. Thanks.
Thank you. It was fun.
All right, we'll see you. If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to check out our Instagram page, which is @midlife_hobby. Or follow us any place you can find podcasts, including Spotify, YouTube, and Apple Podcasts. And if you like what you hear, please subscribe, rate, and give a review on whatever platform you use. Also, I'd love to hear thoughts and suggestions about other hobbies or speakers. Send an email to midlife.hobby@gmail.com. I'll do everything I can to follow up with you. Special thanks goes to Robert Holden for this episode's inspiration around hobbies. Robert is an inspirational speaker who leverages his work on psychology and spirituality when he hosts the PBS show Shift Happens. And he says, make a commitment to having fun. See your best friends and make time for your hobbies and passions. Hope you'll join us next time for Wanted, a Midlife Hobby.